Assalamu alaikum class. Bete, today we are going to discuss another important topic of epidemiology, which is associations and causation. We have finished with the types of different epidemiological study designs, and we all know that the basic understanding of a researcher or an epidemiologist is to understand the cause effect relationship between the multiple variables. Fine. So, throughout his life, an epidemiologist or a researcher wants to find out the association between the two factors. He wants to find out that whether there is a cause effect relationship between these variables or not. So, the ultimate aim of an epidemiologist is to find out associations and causations. So we will be discussing association and causation in today's lecture. So learning outcome of today's lecture are that we will be discussing that how we will be defining association, what are its different types, what is its difference between the association and causation, and then what is the criteria which is used by the epidemiologist to establish a cause effect relationship between multiple variables. So, and as an epidemiologist, this is the most important ultimate aim of an epidemiologist, that he wants to establish cause effect relationship between the variables. Fine. So, we will discuss the difference between causation and association. So, what is an association? In association, whenever an epidemiologist takes a sample from the population and he studies multiple types of variables in these samples, he wants to find out the association between the multiple variables, that whether they are connected with each other or they are not connected with each other. So actually, a researcher starts with a null hypothesis. And null hypothesis always says that there is no relationship between the two variables. But the alternate hypothesis says that there is an association between two variables. Let me give you an example. For example, as an epidemiologist, if you want to find out the association between smoking and lung cancer, the null hypothesis will be that there is no association between smoking and lung cancer. But for your alternate hypothesis, what will you do? That you will say that there is an association between smoking and lung cancer. So whenever you will conduct a cross-sectional survey, you will be studying in a population at one point in time that what is the number of the people who are smokers and what is the number of the people who are having lung cancer in this particular time period. And then you will apply test of significance, and you will take out p-values, and p-values will actually help us to decide that whether we want to accept our null hypothesis or we want to reject our null hypothesis. If we will accept our hypothesis, null hypothesis, automatically the alternate hypothesis will be rejected. But if we will reject the null hypothesis, automatically the alternate hypothesis will be accepted. So as an epidemiologist, we will always be considering our null hypothesis, that there is no association between the two factors. So whenever we want to find out the relationships and associations in cohort studies and case control studies, what we do is that while conducting case control studies, we select cases, we collect controls, and then we find out retrospectively that what was the exposure rate. For example, in smokers, lung cancers, patients who are having lung cancer will be our cases, and patients who are not having lung cancer will be our controls. And retrospectively we will see that how many of them were smokers and how many of them were not smokers, and we will calculate odds ratio to find out an association. So is the case with cohort studies that we will move forward in time, and then we will calculate relative risk. If relative risk is more than 1, it means there is a stronger association between the two. If the relative risk is less than 1, it means the one variable has a protective effect on the other. And if the relative risk is equal to 1, it means there is no association between them. Same as the case goes with the experimental studies. Fine. So to find out the association, what do? We find out correlations, we find out covariations, we calculate tests of significance and interpret our results to find out the relationship between the two factors and to find out the association between the two factors. The most important measure to find out the association is the correlation. Fine. So what do we do further? It is important to remember that how do we define association and correlation, and then how this association is different from the causation. Fine. So when do we say that these two factors or two variables are associated with each other? If the two attributes A and B are found coexistently more often than an ordinary chance, it means there is an association. It means whenever we conduct a study, we find out that the two factors are interrelated to each other. It means there is an association. This association can be positive, this association can be negative, and sometimes there is no association. This degree of association is measured by the correlation. Correlation tells us about the degree of association between the two variables in terms of positive association and negative association. But if the two variables have a cause-effect relationship, then they come under causation. Then they do not show any association. They show a stronger positive association, which is converted into now causation. So moving forward, the base of the pyramid shows whenever we establish association, we first of all calculate correlations, and these correlations tell us that there is a positive correlation or there is a negative correlation. The positive correlation means if the factor A is increasing, automatically factor 2 is increasing. For example, if we compare age and height, as the age increases, height increases. So there is a positive correlation. And negative correlation means that if a factor is increased, the second factor is decreased. For example, if we take one variable as the coffee consumption and second variable as the number of hours which are actually slept by participants, then we will see that there is a negative association, that as we increase intake of coffee in case of number of cups, there is a negative correlation that the duration of sleep is reduced. So we want to find out the association in terms of correlation, and we find out that whether there is a positive correlation or there is a negative correlation. Then the other step which we establish is that we establish associations which can be spurious associations. Spurious associations are those associations which actually are false associations, which researcher uh, actually produces wrong cause effect relationship, or he concludes wrong associations in terms of sampling error, and he concludes the results which are false actually. Then there are confounding variables or indirect association. The indirect association means that the two factors are related to each other, but there is another third factor which directly affects the two associated factors. So the confounding association or indirect association is then superposed by the non-causal association, where there is a stronger association, but we cannot establish a single one-to-one cause-effect relationship. But once we are at the top of the pyramid, we can establish causal relationship, and causal relationship means if there is variable 1 automatically variable 2 will be present there because there is a cause effect relationship between. Please always remember this pyramid because it helps us to establish the cause effect relationship between multiple variables, which is the main function of the epidemiologist. Okay, so as I have already mentioned, that the first step of establishing the association is to measure the correlations, and these correlations can be in terms of positive correlations and negative correlations. The correlations are shown by the scatter diagram, and in this scatter diagram, the one variable is plotted on the x-axis and the other variable is plotted on the y-axis. Independent variable is plotted on x-axis and dependent variable is plotted on y-axis. So this type of interpretation which comes on the correlation is known as positive correlation. It means whenever we are increasing our numbers on the x-axis, automatically the number of observations will be increased on the y-axis. There is a positive correlation between the two. If factor x is increasing, definitely factor y is increasing. So this is a positive correlation. Fine. As I have given you an example of age and height, as the age is increasing, height is increasing, as the age is increasing, weight is increasing. So there is a positive correlation. Then the second component is known as negative correlation when there is the two variables are negatively correlated. It means if the factor x is increasing, factor y is automatically decreasing. Or if factor y is increasing, the factor x will automatically be decreased. So this is a negative correlation. As I have already given you an example that if you will increase the number of coffee cups consumed by you, automatically your sleep duration per night will be reduced. So there is a negative correlation. Fine. So for example, we can have another association. If you will increase the number of hours spent on screen, your grades will be reduced automatically. So there will be a negative correlation between the two. And then there is no correlation between the two when the x and y factors are independent factors and there is no change occur when one factor x increases or decreases. It does not affect the factor y. It means there is no correlation between the two. So one type of association which can be established, which I have already shown you, is to find out the correlation, which can be positive, which can be negative, to find out an association between the two factors. Fine. And this is done by scatter diagram, which is plotted between the two factors. Okay, moving further, the other step of establishing the cause-effect relationship, as you can see, is the development of the spurious association. The spurious association means it's a false association between the two factors. Let me give you an example that in early 50s, it was observed that the number of preterm deaths were more in the hospitals as compared to home deliveries. So, a researcher who wants to establish an association between deaths of newborn babies and the place of delivery, he developed a null hypothesis that there is no relationship between the place of delivery and the number of deaths which are occurring in the newborn babies. But alternate hypothesis will be that there is an association. So what did he do? That he collected sample from the hospital and then he collected sample from those births which were home delivered, and then he actually calculated the number of deaths in this cohort and number of deaths in this cohort, and he postulated that the all those births which took place in hospitals, they showed higher mortality as compared to the those who were born in the home setting. So he concluded that the home deliveries are safer as compared to the hospital deliveries. But this was a wrong hypothesis, and actually this happened because majority of the cases which were referred to the hospital for delivery were complicated cases. They were associated comorbidities, there were complications, and all those cases which were unable to be treated in the home settings were referred there. So they delivered there, and the number of cases of mortalities were more in the hospital than in the home setting. So the data actually data interpretation was right in terms of the researchers' hypothesis, but the setting was wrong and the selected sample was wrong. So this type of association, which is spurious association, which is false association, which is established by the statistical procedure, but there is no association between the two, is known as spurious association or false association. And this occurs where the researcher does not select his sample appropriately. So selection bias can result in the establishment of spurious association or false association. Fine. To avoid this, the researcher should be very vigilant while selecting his samples. Another type of association is known as indirect association, when a researcher establishes the association between the two factors which are uh, which are actually interrelated to another third variable, which is actually the cause. For example, a researcher made the hypothesis that there is no association between development of sunburn and intake of ice cream. An alternate hypothesis was that the increased intake of ice cream um, establishes more sunburn in the population. So he collected the sample, and he made an association that the increased intake of ice cream is causing increased sunburn. But there was a confounding factor which was affecting the both variables independently, which was the hot weather. So with hot weather, there is increased consumption of ice cream, and with hot weather, there is a association of development of the sunburn. So all these two independent factors are basically affected by this factor, which is causing the which has association between the two directly. But the researcher established the association between these two factors which were indirectly associated. So this type of association is known as indirect association, and this occurs because of the presence of the third factor, which is known as confounding factor. And this confounding factor always alters the conclusions and results of the epidemiologists. That's why it is being said that the confounding variable should be kept and they should be stratified. Otherwise, they should be excluded from the sample. So this is another type of association. Then we have non-causal association again. The non-causal association or indirect association, another example can be that the researcher made a hypothesis that there is no relationship between eating habits or lack of exercise and obesity. And the alternate hypothesis was made that there was an association between the two factors, but there was a confounding factor which was affecting both of the variables. For example, all those who lack exercise, they spend more time with the TV, and they sit there and they have more screen time. And then though all those who have more screen time can lead to obesity. So the confounding factors can help us to establish the non-causal association, where the researcher can make a hypothesis that the increased TV watching can lead to the obesity, but indirectly both of them are related to the exercise as well. So it is important to take care of the confounding factors while setting your inclusion and exclusion criteria. The last and important type of association is known as causal association. And causal association means there is a relationship between the two variables which actually fulfill the criteria of establishing the cause effect relationship. Causal association can be one to one association and it can be multifactorial association. One-to-one model says that whenever factor 1 will be present, definitely the factor B will be present. It means there is a relationship of 1 is to 1 in the cause-effect relationship. For example, whenever there will be presence of tuberculous bacilli, it will cause TB. And whenever there will be measles virus, there will be causation of measles vaccine. So it means there is a relationship between which is known as one-to-one relationship or cause-effect relationship. But in true sense, we all know that there are multiple factors which play important role in the causation of a disease. Only the presence of Mycobacterium tuberculosis does not produce tuberculosis because there are multiple other factors. There is immunity, there is hygienic condition, there is overcrowding, winter season, etc., which actually help in the establishment of the cause effect relationship. So one to one cause relationship means that whenever the factor is there, disease will be there. A single factor will only lead towards a single outcome, but this does not occur. Sometimes one disease can be caused by multiple factors, and sometimes one agent can produce multiple diseases. For example, in case of hemolytic streptococci, it can produce streptococcal sore throat infection, it can produce tonsillitis, it can produce scarlet fever, it can produce erysipelas, etc., etc. And sometimes it happens that one disease is caused by multiple factors, as we have already discussed the example of tuberculosis. So one to one cause effect relationship is very difficult to establish as there are multiple factors which play an important role in the causation of disease. So, multifactorial causation means multiple factors can lead to the development of disease. They are common in non communicable diseases. Example can be, for example, lung cancer. There are multiple factors: smoking, air pollution, exposure to asbestos can produce lung cancer. So, the causes can act independently or they can act cumulatively. It means, for example, the lung cancer can be caused by only smoking alone or it can be caused by the exposure to all three type of factors. For example, the smoker is exposed to the area where there is more air pollution and he works in an environment where the asbestos exposure is more. So the cause effect relationship in case of multifactorial causation can be established independently or it can be established by the multiple factors which can act cumulatively to produce a disease. As we have already discussed this example that the lung cancer can be independently produced by all the three factors and sometimes they all three of them can play an important role in the transmission of one single disease as well. So, for whenever we talk about multiple factorial causation, we all know that there is an example of epidemiological triage which says the agent, host, and environment play an important role in the transmission of disease. Then we have the theory of web of causation, which says that the multiple factors play an important role in the disease causation. The simple example which is taken is the coronary heart disease, and still we are working on the multiple factors which are causing coronary heart disease. There are multiple other factors on which we are working. Then there is another theory which is wheel of causation, which says that there is a core of the wheel, which is the genetic core, and then there is environmental factors, which can be physical, biological, and social environmental factors, which can play a role in the causation of disease. So whenever we talk about the causation of disease, there are some factors which are very necessary and they should always be present. For example, in case of malaria, whenever the occurrence of malaria case will occur, there will be presence of Plasmodium falciparum or Plasmodium ovale or whatever Plasmodium type is there. The parasite will be there to cause the disease malaria. And then there are factors which are known as sufficient factors. These are those conditions and factors which are important to produce the outcome. And these are also known as the components. So sometimes the necessary factors and the component factors are sufficient to produce the disease. Whenever we talk about multiple factorial causation, the multiple factor causation can have an additive effect when we add them, and they can have synergistic effect as well. And synergistic effect means that all the three factors are present, but they will not produce 2 plus 2 plus 2 is equal to 6, but effect on in the disease causation, but they will multiply with each other, and 2 into 2 means 4, and 4 into 2 means 8. So 8 times risk increases. So additive effect means the factors are added together to produce a disease outcome, and then we have a synergistic effect in which the factors multiply the role of each other and produce the outcome of interest. So both of them are important in multifactorial causation. There is a criteria which is known as Hill's criteria to establish a cause effect relationship, which says that these six criteria should be fulfilled before we establish the real cause effect relationship between the two variables. It says that there should be temporal association, there should be strength of association, there should be specificity of association, consistency of association, there should be biological plausibility, and then there should be coherence of association. Let's discuss them one by one. So what do we mean by consistency? Consistency means when an epidemiologist conducts different type of studies with different study designs in different populations, each study design which is conducted in different populations will produce the same results. Wherever in the world we conduct a study, we will find out an association between smoking and lung cancer, irrespective of the study design, irrespective of the geographical location, irrespective of the population where we will conduct the study, we will always have the same results. So consistency means whenever the two variables are interrelated consistently and they are producing the same results of same association, it means they have fulfilled the one criteria of consistency of association. The second criteria for establishing the association is strength of association. And strength of association means if you will increase the dosage of factor X, automatically it will increase the incidence of factor Y. In case of smoking and lung cancer, if a participant of the research will will be involved in the increased number of consumption of cigarettes, definitely the chances of getting lung cancer will be increased in them. So the size of relative risk will be higher. It will be more than 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 as compared to 1, which will show that there is a very strong association. Then we will be having dose effect relationship, that we will be observing that if there are multiple groups and they are exposed to different doses, the higher the dose, the more chances of getting the disease will be there. And then if we will stop this particular factor and we will do cessation experiment, definitely the incidence of outcome of interest will reduce. For example, if you will do some intervention in which you will stop smokers to smoke further, definitely the number of incidents of lung cancer cases will reduce in the community. This shows if these three parameters are fulfilled, it means there is strength of association between the two factors, and now the two criteria for the establishing the association are fulfilled. Then the third criteria is specificity, and specificity means that one particular exposure, one specific disease. For example, we all know that with exposure of lung cancer, there will be exposure of smoking, there will be lung cancer, presence of plasmodium, there will be incidence of malaria. Then, if there is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, definitely there will be tuberculosis. If there is lack of exercise, definitely the chances of coronary heart disease will increase. Specificity means the both factors are interrelated to each other, and whenever there is one factor present, the second factor will automatically increase with specific disease. So if this factor is also fulfilled, this criteria is also fulfilled, it means it is there is the epidemiologist must think about a stronger association. Other factors include temporal association. Temporal association means that exposure should always precede in time from the outcome. It means that there should be smoking before the development of the lung cancer in terms of time. And this will establish temporal association. If the outcome of interest is produced before the exposure, then the temporal association cannot be established. So the exposure should always precede the outcome in terms of time, means there is temporal association. Other criteria of establishing association is biological plausibility. It means there are some biological concepts which can explain the association between the two factors. For example, we all know biological theory that whenever there is smoking, it will produce the endothelial injury. Nicotine is its important component. It will produce endothelial injury, and then there will be clotting, and there will be thrombus formation, and this thrombus formation will block the arteries, and there is lack of blood supply, and there will be complete blockade, or there is less blood flow. The coronary muscles will suffer with the ischemia, and it will definitely produce the signs of ischemic heart disease. So we have the biological theory which can explain the relationship between the two. And if this biological plausibility is there, then we can establish cause-effect relationship. And the last of all is the coherence of association. Coherence of association means that the association can be established with the known facts. For example, it was observed that the smoking causes lung cancers in males, and when the females started smoking in late 70s, the incidence of lung cancer also increased in the female population. And when the cessation experiments were done, and the smoking incidence was reduced, the lung cancer was reduced in both genders. So there is coherence with the known fact. Whatever you do supports your known facts. So it will help us to establish the cause effect relationship between the two variables. So I must say that to establish cause effect relationship, all the criteria should be fulfilled, that there should be consistency of association, strength of association, specificity of association, temporal association, biological plausibility, and coherence of association. A very important SCQ, and you can get it in exam, that what are the factors which can help a researcher to find out the cause effect relationship between the multiple variables. So when we want to establish the cause effect relationship, what do? We have two variables, and we conduct the cross-sectional surveys, and then we apply the tests of significance, and on the basis of tests of significance, we calculate the p-values, and on the basis of these p-values, we accept or reject the null hypothesis. Fine, and which we will be discussing in our biostatistics in more detail. Then we see that there is a bias, or the relative risk is high, and the odds ratios are high, and the selection bias is not there. There are no confounding variables. There is no interviewer's bias. The experimentation which is done through blinding. Then we say that there is an association which should be further checked, and then we apply the sixth criteria, which is known as the Hills criteria, and if it gets satisfied, then we conclude that the association is causation. Is basically it can be established cause effect relationship between the two variables. If these three steps are not followed, then we cannot establish cause effect relationship. Fine. So we have in detail discussed how the epidemiologist goes through different phases to establish cause effect relationship, how multiple studies help us to develop cause-effect relationship, and ultimately, when we want to establish cause-effect relationship, what is the criteria through which we can establish cause-effect relationship. So, thank you very much for your concentration, and hopefully you have enjoyed the lecture. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Thank you.